Right, so I'll open up in prayer. Thank you, Father, for this wonderful opportunity to come together, to have the freedom to discuss your word. Father, we just ask that you be with us today. Give us insight, give us wisdom, help us to conduct ourselves the way you want us to conduct ourselves, and also to lead us through this testing times and lead us into safety, lead us into peace, and lead us into truth. Ask it all in the mighty name of Yeshua Mashiach. Amen. Alrighty, so this week we are going to keep Tavo. Now what's interesting about this Torah portion last week was when you go out. And this one is when you come in. So it's basically giving us the idea that we are moving into a direction. So when you walk through a door from one room to another, you go out of one room and you come into another room. So it's like moving into another space, so to speak. And a different room has got a different function or a different application. And this Torah portion basically highlights the shift and the change that we are moving into. Now prophetically I think it's also applicable, but I'm not going to spend too much time on that, but I think we're all aware of that we are moving through a doorway from one environment into another environment where everything's different. There's different wallpaper, different carpets, there's no windows, and there's bars. If you close the door, there's no handle. So it seems. So it's a bit of a testing time for us to by faith just continue walking, because what can you do? As I said earlier, it's like giving birth. You can't hold it back. It just needs to happen because time is pushing us over this threshold, and the Jordan River is there. We're going to cross it sooner or later. And this Torah portion specifically talk about that the crossing over and what that means. Now, in saying that, the crossing over is prophetic, but also it deals with a personal crossing over. So I just want to quickly touch on that. If the other people come, I'll just repeat that. The crossover is the word abar. That is ayin. Use this. Ayin bet resh. Oh, there it is. Now, if you add the yod to the end, it becomes the word ivri. But if you add a yod to any word like melech, it's king. Malachi is my king. So when you add a yod at the end, it personifies it, make it personal. So ivri means my crossing over. And crossing over, spiritual, means that new process, that birth process that takes place. And that's also in line with the underlining symbolism of the mikvah. Because in scripture, in New Testament, you talk about baptisms. I don't know if you read that verse. It's not one baptism. There's many baptisms. And every baptism has to do with entering a new phase, going through a new one state to another state. For example, if someone get married, they get mikvah because a new part of their life is starting. It's also a time of cleansing. That crossing over. In a previous Torah portion, we also saw that the river Jordan is like a force pulling you down towards the Dead Sea, which is the place of death. And in this Torah portion, it also signified the mikvah, specifically the death and resurrection of Yeshua, which is also to do with our crossing over in a spiritual sense, becoming born again. And the mikvah is part of that process, where he was pulled down into death and then he rose again. It's like he crossed over. And in the same way, we need to cross over, but we need to personally do that. You can't latch on to the masses and undercover just creep over, nobody notice it. It's a personal crossing over. So that's the symbolism of the Ivri. There's also other significance in the passage that I want to highlight here, just to recap on last week before I jump in. Before I forget, last week we didn't touch on all of them, but there were actually a couple of enemies that that were highlighted. The first one was Amalek. And Amalek signifies an internal enemy, which is the flesh. Then there was Cain, and Cain, his countenance was down. He was angry, and that made the connection that enemy is internal enemy, which is your emotions. The other enemy we didn't discuss last week is Esau. And Esau is the external enemy on a spiritual level that want to take hold of the birthright. Now the birthright has to do with taking care of the household, looking after the family, having the resources to do so, and make sure that the culture or the faith is transferred to the next generation. That was the function of the firstborn who carried the birthright. And Esau sold that, and then he wanted it back. Jacob accepted the birthright, and he was blessed by his father Isaac to carry the birthright into the next generation. And the birthright in that context was basically, if you think of a little present that's wrapped up, that contain all the promises and the covenant and everything that's in there, the work of the Messiah, everything in there, and they securely carried that over from one generation to another until the time was to unwrap this, and then the Messiah came in through that birthright promise, which is also the concept of the covenant. So when you hear the word birthright or firstborn, it's always to do with the covenant, carrying the covenant and the content of the covenant from one generation to another. So Esau was the enemy of that. Now where Esau come in is in the next picture we can look at in a couple of minutes, of Mount Ebal and Mount Gerizim, just slightly different picture overlaid on the same. And Mount Ebal is basically the main mountain that's going to be discussed in this Torah portion. That's where they had to put up the stone to write the commandments on, had to build the altar there, and that's the mountain that means bold. And Mount Ebal represents curses, and all of that is associated with the enemy called Esau, that is linked to Mount Seir. And Mount Seir was the mountain where the Moabites lived, which is the descendants of Esau. And that's where the word, I think, Ebal was first found.
Where's Mount Seir located? It's west of the, east of the Jordan, is it?
Yeah, I don't know. I know Ebal was south. I don't know where the other one was. But there's a connection between Mount Ebal and Mount Seir, and we're going to touch on. That's linked to this enemy called Esau and the Moabites. And so I'm not going to unravel that one for now. So just to put it into context, so we're in the process of crossing over. There's the birthright, there's also the enemies that want to internally hold us back, and then there's the external enemy who want to take hold of that birthright. Because that birthright, that covenant, is going to come into play after the crossing of the Jordan, where that covenant will be established. So that is just a bit of background there. The next thing that stand out is, I'm working through two Torah portions here, excuse me, I'm jumping a bit. The name of this Torah portion is Tavo. That comes from the word bow. And bow is also one of the Torah portions where Yahweh told Abram to go out. And bow means to go out, to abide, to bring forth, to bring into pass, to call, to carry, to come against, to come upon, to pass, to depart, to fetch, to follow. So it's definitely an action. And I think that's also what is associated with moving over this threshold from one place to another. It's that call to go, to cross over, and that energy. And that's what this Tavo is all about. Now, where this word is first found in Scripture is in Genesis 2 verse 19, where Yahweh formed every beast of the field, every bird in the heavens, and he brought them to Adam, which is the word bow, and he see what Adam would call or kara them. So that's an interesting verse in itself. So he brought the animals to Adam to see. Now the word re'eh, we've touched on in the previous study. Let me just write it down so you can see what it's made out of. We've got a resh, an aleph, and a hay. But the resh, aleph, hay has got different meanings associated to it as well. The resh is head or leader. The aleph is 26, which is also Yotei Vavai, which can also depict the father.
Ox.
Strength.
The ox, strength, yeah.
Yes, strength.
And that's the hidden aleph behind the bet. That's the word Parashah, which is the aleph bet in Parashah, make av, which is the father. And the hay means ruach, the breath of sound. Also means light, truth. Now, if you look at the context of we've got the spirit there, we've got the father, then that head or leader represents Yeshua. So what we see in this word re'eh, in context of the garden, where Adam was called, and that was before sin came, the fullness of Yahweh was in his presence, re'eh. And he had to call, name the animals. And Yahweh re'eh, what he saw them. So that word re'eh basically depicts the fullness of Yahweh was in his presence. And that's the concept of echad, before sin came. It was the world of unity, where everything was one. And after sin came, the world of separation existed. They ate from a tree which had dual fruit, two different fruits. And if you think for yourself, one tree cannot bear two different kinds of fruit. So that's already in itself contrast in itself. So the world of duality was created by the fall of man. And the world of separation came into being. Man was separated from the garden, or before that, Adam was separated into Adam and Chava, and then Yahweh separated humanity, or Adam and Chava, from the garden. And also, before that, when Yahweh created Adam, when he created animals and he created humans, there was a separation or a dual soul concept that made up man, which is the neshama and the nefesh, the two souls, where an animal only have the nefesh, the fleshly soul. So what made man different to animals is the spiritual soul, the neshama. And the neshama, if you want to look at the connection to Yahweh, the nefesh is your personality, your likes and dislikes, who you are. Your neshama is your spiritual new man that Paul talks about, the one that connects with Ruach, and Yahweh's Ruach connects with the Son and the Father, because we don't have, from in this point in time, access to Yahweh's presence other than through the Ruach. We do have it through the Word, but not in the fleshly form. At his first coming, Yeshua was there in a fleshly form, but the Ruach wasn't there. And after he left, he sent his Ruach. So his presence was not the echad, the fullness that we see with the word re'eh, for example. So what this Torah portion is about is to restore the re'eh. Now what you can see, I've got with the two mountains, I've got the symbolism of re'eh there, I've got the aleph direction A, depicted in the picture of Shechem. So Shechem is the process of recreating the fullness of the presence of Yahweh in our midst. And the Shechem was the place where the covenant was established, so to speak. The covenant started with Abraham, and he built an altar at Shechem. Then Moses came and built an altar in Shechem. And the bones of Joseph was also brought to Shechem, and that depicted Mashiach. So we see three people, or three identities there. The first one is Abraham, then Moses, then Mashiach. And those are the three personalities, if you like, or people with functions that moved the covenant into that new space. So the first part of the covenant was with one man, Abraham, depicted with Shechem and the altar. The second one with Moshe, with Moses and Israel. So now we see the seed that was promised to Abraham multiplied. Now it's Abraham and Moses. And then the third person, which is Yeshua, bring in the nations. Now we see the third one with the nations, which is even more seed. So the covenant actually expanded. But the picture of the covenant is built around this Shechem concept. So that proves to us that the covenant is still the same covenant. And the ark was placed in between the two mountains. And the bones of Joseph was in between the two mountains. And the altar was built on Mount Ebal, the mountain of curses, where the work of restoration needed to take place. So that's a beautiful picture of how the covenant extended. And also that's noted here is that they had to inscribe the Torah on a large stone that's placed on Mount Ebal. And that's a picture of the Torah being written on a heart on your Mount Ebal. And Mount Ebal is the imperfect you, the one that needs to be restored. So what do you need to elevate yourself? You need the commandments, and that's the picture of the letter Hey that I write drawn there on top of Mount Ebal. So to convert Mount Ebal as a starting point for your restoration is through the letter Hey, which is part of the word re'eh, which is insight or revelation that you need. But this revelation comes through light, truth, and His Spirit. And that's what we also depict as one of those first processes that take place when you become born again, when you cross over, is that you receive His Spirit, and then He creates a new nature in you, and He writes His commandments in your heart. So that's what the picture of the covenant is all about in that regard. Alright, so that's about Re'eh. Let's move on. So, I lost my thought, James. Sick. So, Adam had to call the animals. Yahweh's Re'eh and saw what Adam would call them. Call is the word kara, which is kuf resh aleph. I'm not going to go into that Hebrew meaning, other than the meanings of that word, which is to call out, to call forth, to cry, to invite, to preach, to proclaim, to pronounce, to publish, and to read. So what we see in this word kara, immediately when you take it to a spiritual level, we see someone who's reading, who's publishing, who's pronouncing, and who's preaching something. In the context of where this word is found in Genesis chapter 2, it was Adam calling animals. So the animals represent the nations. So it's not calling them, you're a lion and you're a crocodile and you're this, you're that. Prophetically, it means that He's calling them, He's preaching to them, He's proclaiming Yahweh's word over them, and then they transformed. So they now receive that letter Hey, that revelation, that ruach, to transform them and to start that initial crossover process in them as well. So it's a beautiful picture, prophetically, what it means to call. Now, if you find yourself on the other side, you crossed over spiritually, what is your calling? Why do I exist? What do I need to do? What is my purpose? Your purpose is to call the animals, to name the animals. Your purpose is to go out in the nations and to preach, proclaim, and to shine the light of Yahweh and His truth amongst the nations. And then they will also cross over. Now the next part of the Torah portion is in line with this little storyline. It deals with the commandment of first fruits. So what's the first fruits relationship with what we just colored into this little word picture? First fruits are basically those who just come in because of the calling and the preaching and the proclaiming of the word. And they become the first fruits, which is now part of what we offer back up to Yahweh. So in the context of the talents, one receives one talent, he dug a hole, buried it in the ground, didn't do anything with it. So the revelation you received didn't do anything with it. The one who received 2 talents, he multiplied that. So he kara, and he brought in more people. Now he's got first fruits he can offer. In the previous studies I did, is that Yahweh has an inheritance, and we also have an inheritance. We immediately think about, oh, I'm going to get a mansion, I'm going to get land, I'm going to get this. But in the context of those passages, your inheritance are people. Yahweh's inheritance are nations. Yeshua's inheritance are the nations. So what you do, your first fruits that you offer up to him are the people that came into faith through your efforts.
Not money.
Not money.
Your first fruit, you will
It's not about money, multiplying your money, making
So
more
we
money.
need
It's
to
nothing to
something
do with that. It's all to do with the covenant promise that was made to Abraham that has to do with seed. To multiply the seed, to multiply the talents, to multiply the revelation. Not make more revelation, but share the revelation with more people. So there's no such thing as a new revelation. There's a new revelation to me that I didn't know about, but it's the existing revelation that already exists in Scripture. Paul didn't get new revelation. Yahweh revealed to him revelation that already existed in the Torah. So there's a lot of preachers out there that say, oh, God gave me new revelation. Yeah, whoop-de-doo. And they lead people astray with
They have to have a new revelation.
Yeah, otherwise people won't
Otherwise,
come.
who's going to
People are not
listen to
gonna
them?
listen.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's nothing new under the sun.
Yeah.
It's the verse that says it. Yahweh does not change.
Yeah.
And if you think about the complexity of his word, we don't need new revelation. We need more revelation that it really exists, that he need to reveal to us, that re'eh. And the coolest revelation, or the revelation we need the most, is the revelation about Yahweh the Father, his Son, and his Spirit. The fullness of him, whatever that looks like in the spiritual. I think we've got the wrong perception of what the Father, Son, and Spirit is. Or the concept of the Trinity. I don't know where you guys sit with that one.
No Trinity.
So my Trinity is,
Sounds
I
Catholic.
don't.
Yeah.
I don't have a problem with Trinity because I believe that there's a dimensional reality that's quite different to what I understand.
yeah.
So from that point of view, but not the way it's presented.
Yeah. For example, the name of the Messiah is not a sound you make to call him for dinner. It's a function. It's a role. The name Father is a function and a role. The name Son is a function and a role. The name Spirit is a function and a role. It's nothing to do with the little family unit or whatever. It's different functions. So if you want to think about the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit in the context of a physical body, the Father is the mind, the head, the leader of the body. The Son is the arm, the right arm, the branch that came down. And the Spirit is the hand that is moved by the arm.
Messiah is the one that points to the Father.
Now, if you follow the Spirit, you follow the Son, you end up with the Father, and you get to know Him. It's all about that. So that's, and the other thing, if you think about that, in the spiritual, if you can compare the physical realm with the realm of, or the medium of water, and the spiritual realm with the medium of air. The Father exists in the higher medium, and He reached down with His arm and His hand inside the lower medium and did work within the lower medium. And then He pulled his arm out, but His hand is still in the medium now. And then we're going to be pulled out by the hand into the higher medium as He pulled back His Spirit out of the lower mediums. So that's a picture I have of the Father, Son, Holy Spirit. I don't have three sitting there around the table. There's some value in thinking about that in the family unit and all that, but it is just a way to try and make sense of it. But it's a spiritual concept. We can't really put our finger on what it is and what isn't and what it's not. But just to say it's a Trinity is very, very one-dimensional thinking in my mind. All right, first fruits is the word resiyith peri. Now, what's interesting, resiyith means first fruits and peri means first fruits. So it's like saying first fruits twice. which is quite interesting. But the second first fruits, peri, is that how you say it? Peri, whatever, also means reward. But resehith means order or rank, the beginning, chief, and principal thing or principal person. So it's the original first fruits, the first one, the original one. That's the first fruits. And then you get the second first fruits, which is the last first fruits or the reward first fruits. And you get the second one as a result of the work of the first one. That's why Yeshua is basically the first fruits. He's the first one. He's the Reishith. And we are the Peri, the second first fruits, which is the reward, the inheritance, the result of. And that's in connection of what we just discussed, in calling the animals, bringing them back, and exposing them to the truth and the light through Yahweh's Spirit, so that there can be first fruits. So the first fruits, as already said, from Yahweh's perspective, are the new believers coming in through our efforts and what we do and our calling. Beautiful picture there. Just want to jump to the other one. Okay, entering the land. So that's also what this Torah portion is about. It's about crossing over, moving from one place to another place. Now, what was in the place before the Jordan is actually the threshold or the doorway. Before the Jordan was the wilderness. And in the wilderness was all sorts of dynamics and enemies and whatnot. When they cross over, they basically cross over to the new potential of entering into the kingdom. So the promised land now has the more emphasis on the principle of the kingdom. And the kingdom is what makes the promised land very important, because a kingdom consists of a land, a king, a government system, and people. So the people crossing over, tick one box. The land they cross over into is another tick in the box. What they need is the king and the government system. And that's where Yeshua will come in. While right there, Mount Sinai, which is connected to Mount Gerizim, which is the mountain of blessing. That's the mountain where Yeshua, the king, will preach the Torah, his government system, to his subjects, the people, his inheritance, in the land. And then, only then, the kingdom is established on earth. We can't say, yeah, we're part of the kingdom now. No, you're in the process of becoming part of the kingdom. Spiritually, yes, you've crossed over. Spiritually, yes, he's sitting on the seat of your heart. He's your king and all those beautiful things. But physically, the reality of when these things happen is where all prophetic prophecies will come into fulfillment, and where that final event will take place, where he will teach his Torah. And I think that teaching the Torah is more about a king ruling his people than just to teach them this is this and that's that and that's how you pronounce this. And it's not like a school class. It's like a king ruling. And we get a picture of Solomon. They brought all their little issues and he gave judgments. This is what you do with that, because he's got the wisdom to resolve those things. And that's how he governed and he ruled his people. And when they have a dispute or they need information regarding what they need to do and how they need to do it, they go and ask the king, and he will make a verdict and teach them what the Torah says about it. So we will have a living Torah speaking to us into our lives exactly what we need for in that moment in time. So it's important for us to physically cross over as well. Now, what is interesting about the crossing over is also related to the law of real estate. I don't know if you heard about that. The law of ownership. That's a term they use in real estate. That the owner of the property has the right to put limitations upon that piece of land. So, for example, you're not allowed to have pets. That proves that he's the owner, because he could make that verdict or that rule. And that's proof of ownership. If you have the right and the ability to enforce restrictions upon the property. Now, in the same way, people normally ask, I think it was Sam the other day who said, why did he put the tree in the garden? Why didn't he put the tree on the moon? I said, but eventually they will travel to the moon and then will eat off the tree. It's just a question of time. So the purpose of the tree in the garden was to prove him as the owner of that garden. He placed a restriction on the garden. You can eat of all of that, but you can't eat of that. That makes him the owner. And that's how he established that. In the same way, on the spiritual level, he placed restrictions on us. Do my commandments. That's a restriction. Why? Because you're my possession. I own you if you obey me. If you don't obey me, you don't abide by my restrictions, and then you're not mine. So we prove that he owns us. We are his possession when we obey his commandments. That's how easy it is. Now in this case, he said that they need to build an altar after they crossed over the Jordan with uncut stones. So he placed restrictions on them building an altar. So they can't just really do what they want. They had to build the altar in a specific way. And that basically proved that he's the owner of stones, that he was created. He's the creator of everything. And also, he's the owner and the creator of that process. And eventually also of the people. Now what's interesting about the stone, the uncut stones, which link to another little rabbit trail that I'm going to connect to this, it brings us back to the word abar. Now if you pronounce abar, which means crossover, slightly different, you don't pronounce it different, you write it different, but it's pronounced exactly the same. You can write it with an aleph. So abar is, the crossover one is ayin bet resh. If you change the ayin to an aleph, it's ayin aleph bet resh. That also means abar, but it means feather. And why is that important? If you read Psalm 91, you'll find out. It's all about the tzitzis, the wings, the covering, the protection, comfort, peace, protection. So that's feather. That's the purpose of feather. You abide under the shadow of the Almighty. What caused the shadow? His feathers. His abar. Now what's interesting, if you dissect the word abar, you chop it in the middle, you can make abar up of two words. Aleph bet and then bet resh. Aleph bet is Av or father, and bet resh is bar, that's son. So it's the combination of the father and the son that makes the protection and the feather. In the same way, you can take the aleph and the bet and you can connect it with the bet and a nun. Ben plus Av, which is Aben. Sorry, Aven. Aven, it's a soft B. That means stone. So there's your stone. So in combination with the feather and stone, what does that tell us? It's the when the father and son comes together, there's protection, blessing, and covering and all that. But also when the father and son comes together, there's a stone. Where do we read about a stone?
And Peter's name, and then
it's a stone
that will destroy.
That will come and destroy the statue, or the, what do you call it, the idol or whatever, that depict the kingdoms of this world, specifically hitting the last one, the 10 toes, iron and clay, and will destroy the kingdoms. And that's part of establishing the kingdom, is to annul the previous one, to cleanse the earth from the previous kingdom. And that's why the crossing over, Abar, is linked to the stone and the feather. Because these people will be in judgment, or in the time of judgment, in the midst of judgment, but they will be protected under his wings. So they will see the Father as a blessing, Mount Gerizim, where the unrighteous, who are not his possession, who's not doing his commandments, will see him as Mount Evil, the curses that will come upon him. So that's a beautiful picture of the little rabbit trail there connecting the Father and the Son. What's also interesting is there's two words for curse in the Torah portion. The one is kalal, and that's also found in Superman. Kalal, is it?
Kal-El.
Kalal.
Yeah.
That's the Hebrew word that means curse.
Oh, right.
Yes.
That's Superman's name.
Whose name is it?
Kal-El, that's his name.
Yeah.
That's what it's
It means curse.
Wow.
And the other word is aror. It also means curse. Now, kalal means to diminish the positive, and aror means to increase the negative. So it's a double whammy, a double negative.
which one?
So kalal
Kalal
means decrease is positive.
Positive, yeah.
Haro.
means to increase the
Increase
negative.
the negative.
So how do you decrease the positive? I'm not going to give you rain on your land. That's positive. I'm not giving you food. How do you increase the negative? The enemy will come and they will plunder, steal, whatever. That's increasing negative. Earthquake, the earth opening up, swallowing you, that's the negative. So curses come in two forms. And that's the nature of a curse. It's got those two energies working in combination. And it's not like Yahweh sit there and he dish out the curses. He's just sitting there with his shadow. And if you are under his covering, you won't be exposed to that. You'll experience him as the feather. But if you move out of his shadow, you'll meet him as the stone. Where Kalel and Aror will come coming down on you like hail and fire and brimstone and earthquakes and whatever. So that's comfort to us going into an uncertain time. What do we need to do for protection? We need to be on Mount Gerizim. We need to be in the shadow of the Almighty. What does the shadow of the Almighty mean? It means we need to be on Mount Gerizim. We need to
the stinging.
have a revelation of Him and to be the ones who followed the process of being called.
Sorry.
All right. What's also interesting is that the story of Mount Ebal and Mount Gerizim was after they crossed over, after the Jordan. Now, in a prophetic time frame, I haven't really thought about this, but that's an interesting thought in itself, because the Jordan basically, in my interpretation, depicts the Great Tribulation. Now, after the Great Tribulation, before you is blessing and curses. What are you going to do? And I think that's really relevant for those who are in the 1,000-year period, because that's the period after the Great Tribulation. It's not Great Tribulation and immediately the new heavens and new earth comes down. There's a period of time where there's enemies. If you think of it, they entered the promised land and then they had to possess the land. And there was enemies that they had to conquer, of which Jericho was the first. So, and that depicts the time period of the 1,000 years in my interpretation. And that's where you have these two mountains before you, specifically for those people. Because they need to find the bridge. So I draw a little bridge there, hanging bridge, rope bridge, whatever you want to call it, between Mount Ebal and Mount Gerizim. And the way to cross over from one mountain to another has to do with the key that is in between the two mountains. Now what's interesting, they say that Mount Gerizim or Shechem was in the place called Shalem, which, if you write it without the Vav, it's the same as Shalom. And that's also connected to Melchizedek, because he was the king of Shalem. Now Melchizedek is automatically now connected to Shechem. And Shechem means shoulders. So what do we need if you have shoulders? To have a body, you need the head. And that's where the letter Resh comes. That's the head, and the two mountains are the shoulders. And I think the depiction of the little devil, the little angel on the two shoulders, that's Mount Ebal and Mount Gerizim. Because the one is curses and the one is blessings. And if you listen to the enemies, now the enemies we identified is two internal enemies: flesh, Amalek, emotions, Cain. And then we have an external enemy, the one who want to steal the birthright, the one who want to steal your shadow, your covering, the one who want to hold you back. And that's the external enemy called Esau. Alright, so Mount Ebal, what's interesting, Mount Ebal means stone and to be bold. Ebal is first found in scripture in Genesis 36, where it lists the descendants of Esau. Interesting that Esau is connected to Mount Ebal, the mountain of curses. Now, Esau was the father that where the nation of now I lost my train of thought. The Edomites came from, and the Edomites lived on Mount Seir. So immediately I made the connection. There's a mountain that's Mount Ebal, Mount Seir. The Edomites lived there, and They are the descendants of Esau. And Esau is the enemy who wants to steal the birthright. So what we have in between the mountains is the ark. There's a stone with the commandments on it, signifying the commandments written on my heart. So this enemy wants to take away the commandments from your heart. They want to take away your right to access the covenant. And if you access the covenant and the commandments on the heart, that's the bridge that connects you to the mountain of blessing. That's the way you cross over from one mountain on the other. And what sits above there is the letter Resh, the head upon the shoulders, which is Mashiach. He is the commandments, and he is the head and the leader. And he's the next component of Re'eh. The first component we found on the left shoulder, which is Yahweh's mercy and grace revealing his truth and his spirit on the mountain of curses, to call his people out from that mountain of curses, out from that dark place, and to give them the opportunity to cross over through the work of Mashiach, the head, and the ark, which is the covenant, and also the spirit, the commandments on the heart. And that bridge, which is Mashiach, the covenant and the commandments, will give you in contact, make you make contact with the Aleph of Re'eh, which signifies Yahweh, the Father. And there you have the Re'eh, the restoration of the presence that was in the garden when Yahweh Re'eh to see what Adam would call the animals. So the animals or the nations, they need to hear the calling, the light, the truth, and receive the Spirit. Then they're faced with the two mountains. What I'm going to do? And the word of Yeshua, the commandments, and the Spirit writing those in your heart will help them to cross over. And the word crossover is my crossing over, which is your personal conversion into becoming Hebrew. So that's the underlining idea of what Hebrew means. It means to cross to the mountain of blessings where the feather is, not the curses. And when you're on the right mountain, because he split it to 12 tribes, when the Son and the Father will appear, you will experience him as blessings, the feather, Mount Gerizim, or you'll experience him as the stone, Mount Ebal and Mount Seir. And then after the smoke clears, then the kingdom will be established. And then Mount Gerizim is associated with Mount Sinai, or Mount Zion, where Yeshua will teach the Torah. So we have a stone, the commandments on the stone. On the other mountain we have a person who is the commandments, who is the Torah, who will teach it. So the stone on the heart is on the inside, but it is limited because I get in the way. I have a choice not to listen to that. I have a choice not to adhere to that. Even though it's written, I can still ignore the Spirit. What does the Spirit speak to me in my heart? This commandment, that command, do this, do this. He's trying to emphasize the positive and diminish the negative in my life. He's doing the double whammy positive in my heart. And I need to choose between these two mountains, the double negative or double positive. Now, who is in charge of Mount Seir? Now, this is an interesting thing. Mount Seir comes from the root word Sayir. So it's Shin. I wrote it there somewhere. There. Shen, Ayin, Resh. And Sayir means hairy, goat, and devil. Now what's interesting is that it's a contrast between that. Just like we got a tree with two different fruits, we got a mountain. The one mountain is bold, the other one's got hair on it. Can't be both, but in this case it is. So that depicts the world of duality, the two contradictions, contradicting one another, the paradoxes that exist in the world of duality. And then you get to the world of Echad, where Mount Gerizim and Mount Zion
Also
is the
says
same.
Esau was a hairy man.
Yeah, he's a goat. His father is the devil, the goat. So I think the concept of also Sayir means rough, to be afraid, storm, to sweep away. So the nature of connecting to that energy, if we can call the devil an energy, if you play with the enemy, he will make you afraid, You will be like a storm. There will be storms in your life, upheaval, and then eventually you will be swept away. Swept away where? River Jordan will sweep you down to the Dead Sea, down to the depths of death. So that's why the symbolism of the devil will cause you to go to hell. It's more about the Jordan that will sweep you into the Dead Sea. And
Where you will
Sayir, which is the goat over there, is the energy behind that that will make you make the wrong decision that will cause you through your stupid actions to be swept away. So it's not him that caused it, it's you listening to him. Just like in the garden, they listened to the Nachash, the enchanter. And he enchanted them by twisting the truth just ever so slightly and elevating the fact that you can be like God. Oh yeah, I'll take that. You can be rich. Oh yeah, I'll take that. You'll have a man. Yeah, I'll take that. You can have your best life now. Yes, I will definitely take that one. So telling you things that you want to believe is the biggest lie you can ever have. And that's why it works. Because he worked with people's internal enemies. Your emotions, your flesh. Cain and Amalek, the two enemies on the other side of the Jordan. So very interesting little word picture there. Next thing is, I already said this. I think I've jumped through this really quickly. Let me just go to the other document. Oh, the stages of your conversion is also found within this stages of crossing the river Jordan. So the first stage was to listen to the call that Kara, that Adam called or named the animals, is to listen to the call. And then the next thing that needs to happen, you need to abar and make it a personal crossover, which is Ivri. Then you become a Hebrew. And part of crossing over is the first step where you will receive back the hay in your life. And that's depicted by Abraham that received the hay, which became Abraham. And that hay, that also means light, is the same light that was in the garden, which is ore with an iron. If you write ore there. Ore that is light is Aleph, Vav, Resh. This is light. And if you change the Aleph to iron, Vav, Resh, it means skin. And the light is what covered Adam and Chava. And that light is depicted by the hay which Abraham received. And that is the hay that you need to receive. And that hay is signified by Yahweh's Spirit. That's the sound of breath, His Holy Spirit and His Spirit of truth. And through Him you receive that rebirth process that will make you a Hebrew, but also write the commandments on your heart, change your nature. And that will then reinstate the ore, signified by the letter A in your life, which will set you up to enter back into the garden in the glory of Yahweh, depicted by this light. The next thing that happens as part of that is to write the commandments in your heart as you receive the hay. The next step is crossing the Jordan, because he said the same day you cross the Jordan you should get a pillar and write the commandments. So that's basically, it sounds like you write the commandments before you cross over, or if you cross over you write the commandments, or it's the same thing at the same place. I think it's the same process, it's the same thing. But crossing the Jordan is also a symbol of the mikvah. The mikvah has to do with your death, as signified by your death and resurrection. I just want to find this a couple of verses there in the New Testament I want to read for you. Romans 6 verse 3 to 4. Or do you not know, as many of us who were baptized into Messiah Yeshua were baptized into his death? Therefore we are buried with him through baptism into death, that just as Messiah was raised from the dead by the glory of the Father, even so we also should walk in the newness of life. Now just in that passage, I can see immediately there's words and symbolism used there that we already discussed. The death is basically the Dead Sea that's connected to the Jordan. The Jordan is connected to the mikvah. Yeshua crossed over, but before that he was pulled down into death and then he rose again, so that we don't have to go down and up, we just go through. I also see the wording there that we are baptized into his death, so we don't have to die. So he paid the penalty for sin, which is death, depicted by the Red Sea, the Dead Sea. And when we rise again, we are raised into the newness of life. And he talks about the glory of the Father, and the glory is this restored glory that will cover your sin.
Time's up.
Then John 3 verse 5 basically say the same thing. Most assuredly, I say to you, unless one is born of water and the Spirit, he cannot enter the kingdom of Yahweh. So the picture we have is entering the kingdom, is crossing the Jordan. Now we see there's water and Spirit, there's the Jordan, but there's also the stone with the commandments on it, which is the Spirit writing the commandments on the heart. And that's basically what the purpose of Yahweh's Spirit is, and what the new covenant is all about. So the new covenant is like the new moon. It's not a different one. It's a moon in a different phase, and it's new to me. A new generation where I'm part of the seed, the multiple, not the single. The Abraham when he made the initial covenant promise. I'm part of not even after Moses, but after Mashiach. I'm part of that revelation of the covenant and writing the commandments on the stone. And so the mikvah is, I don't know if you guys ever heard a teaching on the mikvah.
A few different.
I think
ones.
Michael Root gave a very good teaching on the mikvah.
Yeah, I've heard his.
Yeah, so
It's
he's
very, very detailed.
yeah, so his is the one that I know that's the most detailed one. But I just want to quickly recap. I don't know if you said this or if someone else said it, but basically being baptized into Messiah, Yeshua. Now how they worked back in the day when there was a rabbi and Talmudim or disciples, when they choose to follow a certain rabbi to indicate that they're going to start to walk in a newness or new phase in their life, they were baptized into the name of that rabbi to demonstrate that rabbi is Talmudim. In the same way, we are baptized in the name of our rabbi, which is Yeshua. That's why you cannot be baptized into a denomination or a church, because it's not a person. It's not your rabbi or your teacher. Otherwise, you need to be baptized into the pastor's name to make it technically correct.
That's weird.
Thank you. Thank you.
So I'm baptized into the name of Joel Osteen. Hail to Joel Osteen.
How many
Or
churches
Kenneth
have we
Copeland,
gone
whatever.
to? How many mikvahs would that be?
Oh my goodness, yeah.
Yeah, so they're missing the point if they say, and I know some of our other denominations that we are close in contact with, they baptize you into their church, into their denomination, to be part of them. And they miss the point completely. It's not what the mikvah is for. So this verse in Romans is basically underlining that fact. And the verse that says we are to be baptized in the name of the Father, the name of the Son, in the name of the Holy Spirit, or the name of Father, Son, and Spirit. I don't know how. I think it's in John. That was inserted afterwards. It's not the original text.
Yeah.
Because in Acts, it contradicts it and says we need to be baptized in the name of Yeshua. But in that one, it says we need to be baptized in the name of the Father, in the name of
The Son and the
the Son
Holy
and the Holy Spirit. But what's the name of the Father?
Yeah.
And you're missing the point of being baptized into the name of your rabbi. Who is our rabbi? Not the Spirit, not the Father. It's definitely Yeshua. He's our rabbi. He's our teacher. He's the Torah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he's going to be the one who's going to be our rabbi. He's going to teach us. He's going to be the rabbi and the king and the Messiah. He's got different
The
roles.
Spirit doesn't have a name.
So just that in itself is missing the fundamental purpose of the mikvah in itself. The other purpose of the mikvah is the symbolism of the water, because of the meaning that the word is also the water, is to immerse yourself completely in his word. And when you become a new follower, it's a demonstration that I'm going to fully immerse myself in his word and getting as much as I can of him. I'm going to inhale the water if I can to get Mashiach fully inside of me and his commandments. But that's basically happening when his Spirit is writing it on your heart, which is governing you, but you also need to study the scripture, which is another aspect of having his word inside of you. So those are the two verses that's very fundamental regarding. So the thing I want to underline here is you cannot enter the kingdom unless you are born of the water and unless you are born of the Spirit. Born of the water has to do with his word, and born of the Spirit has to do with your new nature. So you can study the word and everything about the word, know what the name of the Mashiach is and all of that. You can quote it, doesn't mean a thing unless it's part of your nature. And it's symbolically done through the mikvah. So I don't know technically if you haven't done the physical mikvah, whether you're going to stand outside the gate and cry, you're not going to be let in, or whether it's a thing that happens inside of you that will basically
Oh, I
be the
just thought-
qualifier.
It just occurred to me recently when we were baptised, when we first got saved, it was they brought in a big tin tub, into the church on the platform. So it actually wasn't kosher because it wasn't running water.
Yeah.
So to go down to the
River.
river and
Do it again.
to do it again.
Now they ran the water into the bathtub.
From the kitchen sink.
And then John 14 verse 21 to 23 said, "He that has my commandments and keeps them, he is that loves me. And he that loves me shall be loved by my Father, and I will love him and will manifest myself to him." Yeshua answered and said to him, "If a man love me, he will keep my words, and my Father will love him, and we will come into him and make our abode with him."
So my question is to some of our friends that do not believe in keeping the commandments. What does that scripture say?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Well, they get around it by saying Yeshua's got commandments, and then there's the old commandments. So Yeshua made new commandments. Yeah, two, which can be summarized into one, which is love.
Actually, I just thought of something that you said way back when you said, "Oh, there's nothing new under the sun," that's in the scripture. So there can't be anything new, and in a sense, by 6 days everything was created, and then the Shabbat that puts an end to anything new. That's it. There was a rest. Nothing was created, and that's it. And then that cycle repeats. So there can't be new revelation. There can't be new commandments. There can't, like in that sense, because of Shabbat.
Yeah.
That's the.
He rested, he said it's done.
That's it. Yeah.
Jesus said it's done. It's finished.
Jesus also said it.
But in the terms of them saying the new commandment, I mean, it's not. It's renewed.
It's saying,
It's
like
just
we said
renewed,
last time, it's saying that Yahweh made a mistake if you
Yeah,
remember that.
yeah.
And he didn't.
Yeah. Interesting.
So the covenant was renewed in Moab, and that's the topic of the renewed covenant. So what is the essence of the renewed covenant? It's basically the covenant revealed to more people, and it's a new phase of the work of Messiah. So if you can think about the previous pattern I described with Abraham, Moses, Yeshua, the covenant was given to one, Abraham, then it went through the birthright to Isaac, Jacob. Jacob became Israel, and then the first multiplication came, which is the first initial fulfillment of Abraham's promise. Now, if you can take, just talking about this word prophecy, I've been struggling with this word prophecy because of our previous discussions with other people, is that does prophecy only mean future event, or does it only mean something that relates to a time frame? If you think prophecy is only to do with dates and a time frame, I don't think that's the right interpretation of a prophecy. A prophecy is something that will happen in the future, but then a promise is also a prophecy, because a promise will happen in the future as well. So the promise made to Abraham, which is a covenant, so the covenant is prophetic in a sense, because the covenant will happen in the future when my generation's generation will accept the covenant as well. Then the fulfillment of that promise will happen in the future. And that underlines my concept that I believe that any prophecy is cyclical. There's waves and it repeats. It's got a pattern. So the prophecy of salvation, the prophecy or the promise of the covenant and salvation and the Messiah, and accepting that and the work, the restoration process of humanity repeats throughout generations as new generations accept it throughout history. So that prophecy is fulfilled millions or billions of times over and over and over and over and over again. So you can't say prophecy can only be fulfilled once, for the reason that it is a future event. It's seated in the concept of a promise that's foundationally laid upon the concept of a covenant. And the covenant exists to be the foundation of a process that needs to happen to restore everything back to the original intent that Yahweh wanted when He created everything, and to reverse the effect, to diminish the negative and to increase the positive, so to speak. That's what restoration is also all about. So blessings is associated with restoration, and curses has to do with the further separation of those things that are not part of the original, just because they're not because Yahweh is angry or evil or whatever. It's just because darkness cannot exist in the presence of light. It's a fact. And when Yahweh appears, His light will seem like a grateful or a great event that people will be grateful for, or for other people it will be this terrible thing, just His presence, and they will experience it as judgment, in the same way the feather and the stone come into play. Yeah, so the extension of the covenant and the fulfillment of Abraham's prophecy. So the first fulfillment was through the 12 sons of Jacob. Now you can say, oh, Abraham's promise is fulfilled, hallelujah. It's never going to be fulfilled ever again. No, it was not. Every single son became a nation. And then 10 of them got scattered. Now they're again being called back, which is the nations. And that Abraham's promise will still be fulfilled, and I'm part of that fulfillment. Because I become Hebrew just like Abraham became a Hebrew. My personal crossing over fulfills the covenant promise made to Abraham. So I'm grafted into the household called the house of Hebrews, if you like. And the reason this is in the forefront of my mind, because when I started the book of Hebrews, I asked myself the question, why the title Hebrews? Think for yourself. Time frame, only Jews. No, and Gentiles. What does Hebrew mean? Why doesn't it call them Jews or Yehuda or whatever they called themselves back then? Why the term Hebrews? Because the writer of Hebrews wanted them to focus on the word Hebrew that is linked to Abraham and the covenant, the original promise that was made. He wanted to take them back to the original.
The word Hebrew is a verb, isn't it?
Yeah.
Ivri, cross over, yeah. And it's also a place, regions beyond.
And it's now a language.
And it's a language,
Ivrit. Yeah.
which is a medium.
Mm.
So it's a place, it's an action, and it's a medium.
Mm.
Just like water is a medium,
Mm.
and it's also containing energy. It can contain memory. The same like the word. It's, and the word is action as well. And if water flows, it's got action potential to perform energy or to perform work. Yeah, so very interesting concept. But the most fascinating thing is the concept of Hebrew. Now the regions beyond means that it is in a different medium. It's not part of our physical. That's what I think about regions beyond. Beyond what? Beyond the ice.
Beyond the ice.
Yeah.
Beyond the dome.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's in another dimension. So it's beyond that. And the promise was given to the person who's got the key to give you access to the regions beyond. And that key was revealed, and a bit more was revealed, and then a bit more was revealed. And if you read Leviticus and everything with the tabernacle and the priesthood and the sacrifices, there's a bit more that's revealed about what does it mean, what does that Hebrew mean, and what are the mechanisms required to translate you to the regions beyond. And all those things in there are required as part of that. So it's not a simple thing. It's like opening up a watch, and you see all the little gears and all the little things and springs and things and screws that need to be in there. You can ask yourself, why didn't he make a simple one? Because it's a complex device. You can't have a simple one, it won't be accurate. In the same way, Yahweh's gear work of the physical things that need to happen to translate us to the higher regions beyond, which is actually the original, back to the Father, is very complex. And if we think of ourselves, I'm a complex being, and he's got all his time to try to help me, and I'm my worst enemy, because I try to follow my flesh, or led by my emotion, and forget about the birthright, and if I go in a different tangent, and then you need to try and pull me back like a little naughty sheep running in the field trying to find green grass, and gently he will just pull me back in line and help me to find the way again. So we are complex beings in itself because we have free will. And the concept of free will, that's another question someone asked me. Why do we have, or what's the idea of, free will and choice? Why can't he make us to obey him in the first place? Why go through all the suffering? Because if he made me to worship him, then he didn't have to die. It wasn't the fall. He could have removed the tree completely. Yet everything in his power not to put those things in place. But if you think back on how complex we are, in order to love, because the ultimate love is a choice, and in order to choose, you have to have two things to choose between. Hence the meaning for the two trees, or the reason why the two trees exist. For me to activate choice, so I can have free will, so that I am not forced or programmed to love him, I choose to love him, which is the highest form of love. So for me to love him, I have to have free will, I have to have choice, and the garden had to have the tree. And we have to have the fruit of duality. We have to have the two mountains to be able to exercise that choice, which is love. If you choose to do my commandments, it is he that loved me. And we saw what it means, why the commandments exist, is to prove that you are owned by him. You're his possession. He put a restriction on you.
One of the things that I think comes out of it is that you cannot force someone to conform.
No.
As a like rules and regulations within a community, you can't force someone to conform. They must have the capacity to choose sin. And if they choose, they don't have that choice.
Yeah.
There's no free will, like you say.
You're in a cult.
You're in a cult.
Yeah, it's more powerful,
Yeah.
or you're more successful if you can convince someone to agree with you and do what you suggest them to do. than to force them to do it.
That's
right, yeah.
years ago we had issues in church we were in terms of the use and abuse of spiritual power. There's a book on that one that we were dealing with. I was wrestling with it. We hadn't been Christians all that long. And there's a scripture they like to trump at and that is obey those who rule over you. But when I went back to the original Greek, what it actually is saying is be persuaded by those who lead you.
Yes.
Not obey those who rule.
So that put the emphasis on good leadership
It puts the emphasis on them to persuade you.
and to be
And to have
Choice.
and to have a capacity to choose, to follow. Totally different thing. And
In other words, practice what you preach so that I can make a choice.
Yes.
Yeah.
It looks
You're
like
a
that
very
one's
good
got
leader.
Torah
Yeah.
written on his life. I'm not
Yeah.
one to
I'll be
follow.
baptized into that name.
Someone said, what is the earmark of a good leader? He will have many followers.
Oh, yeah.
Like Jim Jones.
Well, he's got the ability to persuade people to follow him, whether he's leading them in the right way or wrong way.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, he's
So
still
that
leading.
confirms what you're saying.
Yeah.
So yeah, he's an excellent leader because he persuades people. But in a spiritual sense, in a spiritual sense, relating to Yahweh's word, the leaders need to be
Torah followers.
know the word,
Yeah.
be full of the Spirit, have the anointing, and persuade people with truth, not with confusion, not with carrots.
And have the fruit of the Spirit.
That's
That's the
right.
fruit of the Spirit.
Yeah.
So when you
Right.
look at the picture of the fishermen and the disciples, they used nets. They could have used fishing rods or harpoons. The harpoon is the eternal burn. You scare them into the kingdom. The fishing rod is prosperity teaching.
Carrot.
Look at this lovely thing you can get. Go chase that one. Or the net is your life that you just hang in the water and people will swim into it. And then you help them into the boat, which is salvation. Which is the method that Yeshua recommended. And what's the ones that they use nowadays? Eternal burn or prosperity, little carrots they hang in front of people.
That's true.
So that's the wrong motive. Because they
Mm.
one rule or use the enemy called emotions, Cain, through fear. The other one use the internal enemy, which is the flesh, which is all carrot in front of you. So they use the two internal enemies to move you in the direction they want to move you.
Our job is to keep mending our nets. Make
Just
sure
make
when
sure
they
that
go in the water.
Exactly.
if you got a hole in it, fix it, because otherwise fish will go out if they see how ridiculous you are if you don't walk according to the word.
Yeah.
So, I'm not want to be like them. And I think,
That's what I can swear.
oh, I lost that one because did the wrong thing there.
Talking about, I noticed Malachi catching a chook again.
Yeah.
They got out
Oh
again.
no.
Yes.
We'll have to go and
They
mend
can't
our
be
nets.
going under it. Surely they're not going.
I went around the whole thing.
They're not going under it.
I don't know how else they're getting out. There must be somewhere, but I couldn't see where they were getting out.
Ivory.
Unless they've dug a hole.
Your name means Hebrew. Ivory.
Yeah, that's your name. You're a Hebrew, man.
I was actually, I was looking at that and I thought,
I
well,
thought it's Ivry, isn't it?
I
Why
did
crossing
read
Well, the consonants are the same, so the meaning.
Ivrit.
Because that would come out
Agree.
in Hebrew.
Yeah.
It would be the same letter.
Yeah, I think
So
that.
is that the putting the I or the E onto the word? Is that like a rule?
Yeah,
in
so-
It's
Hebrew?
not like
Yeah.
mine, like, yeah, it means
It
to me.
makes it
Yeah, it's
possessive.
most personal.
Yeah.
The yod at the back, it's the E sound.
Yeah.
And if
Yeah,
it's
okay.
plural, if it's for us, it's Avenu means our Father.
Oh, yeah. So it's
Avi.
possessive by a group or possessive singular kind of thing.
Mm.
Is that like, I don't know what the grammatical terms are like in Hebrew? They don't have nouns, verbs, and adjectives, do they? Or
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. Vav in front is and. It's a connecting word. If you put a
Grant is very good.
a bed in
with
front of it.
Hebrew language, and my
means
pastor,
in.
very good with Hebrew language.
Bamidbar means in the wilderness.
Mm.
Midbar is wilderness.
Yeah.
There's a lamed that you put, I think, in front of it means something else. La Adonai, I don't know what that means.
It's like a the Lord. Isn't it? La? It's like that, or
I don't know. Yeah. So
Interesting.
Is that it, folks? Or are you still
I
busy?
think, I just want to quickly scan through here. Just want something I want to re-emphasize. It really stood out to me today before we step off this. We did the Torah portion Re'eh the other day with all the end time things and whatnot related there. But just to show the multi-dimensional aspect of the Hebrew language, Re'eh in this context was in the context of the Garden of Eden, was in the context of Yahweh's insight. And Yahweh's insight is Himself, that consists of the three aspects of Him, which is the head, the light, the truth, which is His spirit, and then the Aleph, which is His strength, which is also the Father. So the essence of Him is revelation. So if you think about Re'eh, that means revelation and insight, and to understand with a deep understanding. That is what our goal is, to studying the Word, is to have that deep understanding of the fullness of all Yahweh's aspects. And that's it within the word Re'eh, which is the verb actually trying to get us to that point, but it's also the goal. So you can see that in Hebrew, it's the medium, it's the goal, it's the same concept, which make it very multidimensional in a sense, different to any other language. And the same we saw last time with Av and Ahav, where Av is father, and if you add the letter Hey, which depicts his spirit, it means love. So love is the two aspects of Yahweh, which is the Father, and the Spirit, which is love. So and the other thing that I found, just looking at the name Yeshua. Yeshua is not something in himself. If you think about the meaning of a name, it's a destiny and a character. And the name Yeshua means Yahweh is salvation. It's like pointing away from himself. So it's not me. I'm not the goal. Even if you say you praise him and you worship him, you worship Yeshua and all that, you always refer to the Father, because Yahweh is salvation. He's pointing the way to the Father. So he doesn't take glory in himself. That's how humble he is in his function as the Son. Just to give you a bit of a snippet on my study on Hebrews, which I found very interesting. I discovered the 3 wells. I don't know how I came about that, but I found 3 wells.
Down one of the rabbit holes.
He got there.
Oh, no. It's actually quoting the author of Hebrews, found a little Torah portion to quote for us in Hebrews 3. And that's in Exodus 17, verse 5 to 7. And it's actually a psalm he quoted, and the psalm refers to Exodus 17. And he referred to the place Masan and Meribah. And that has to do with strife and contention, which is the meaning of the word Meribah. Now what's interesting, Meribah is the place where there's wells. I've actually got a picture here. It looks like there's 3 wells. I can come and show
Is
you.
that the Isaac's wells? Those wells that
This is just the fountain, what's currently in Meribah. That's what it looks like. Looks like water coming from a stone.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
So this is modern
Stone.
Yeah, that's modern day.
Wow.
Oh, yeah.
And it's interesting. So it looks like
coming
that.
out of the rock.
And this is the place where the water came from the rock.
Oh wow.
Yeah. When Moses hit the stone and water came out. And in that Exodus 17, it actually Moses actually pleaded with Yahweh and said, "These people are about to stone me.
Yeah.
Please help," kind of thing. And then Yahweh said, "Go and take your rod and strike the stone." And then the water came out. And the issue was that they wanted to go back to their old ways. And their old ways was Egypt. They wanted to go back to their original, where they came from. And that's also what this Mount Ebal and Mount Gerizim represent. So if you're in a difficult situation, what are you going to do? Think about all the good days you had, all the good times you had. I want to go back to that. Let's go back to that. This is nonsense. I don't want to move forward. Or are you going to look at the promise, which is the prophecy, which is connected to the covenant, that points to the future, which Yahweh points out? Where do you want to go? Or to your own little comfort zone, your last little highlight you had that you want to revisit? Or are you going to move forward to the greater that's coming? Now, the Meribah...
On that, just that, have you ever discovered that, you know how in life you have, you call them peak experiences. You go to a place or a situation, and it just was like, oh, this is I really love it. But then
let's camp here.
And you want to, and I've done this. Let's go back and visit this place because this was so wonderful, and you go back there and
it's not really that special now.
Is it?
It was special back then.
At that time was so awesome.
The experience is special.
Because if your reference point, what you experienced before that, actually made that place great.
Yeah.
But if you've experienced something greater, if you go back to that one, it's worse off.
Yeah.
So even though they traveled through the wilderness, I think going back to Egypt would have been very bad for them. To experience slavery again. Then walking around in the wilderness is like walking in the park. Right, do that. And this is the time where Yahweh gave them manna, gave them water. He looked after them. And they still murmured and complained. They wanted to go back into slavery. Now, where this word Meribah is first found is in Genesis 26 verse 20, where Isaac's herdsmen contended, that's that word Meribah, with the herdsmen of Gerar. Now Gerar means lodging place, a place of rest, and that basically gives you the context of they wanted to go back, they murmured and complained, and Gerar is also the lodging place, the place of rest, which in their minds was Egypt. And the root word of Gerar actually means garar, that means to chew the cud. So there's another deeper underlying meaning, because chew the cud automatically means to mean people who follow the word, to study the word, who are kosher animals, who bring the word back up and think about it, to meditate on the word. So the herdsmen of Gerar are actually the righteous people, and these people contended with the righteous people of Yahweh. In this picture, Moses was the herdsman of Gerar, and they contended against him. And they wanted to go back to their lodging place of rest, which is Egypt. So that's that one. But then it goes on to say that, and then Isaac dug another well, which is Esek, that means strife and quarreling. And they contended again there. So that's the second well. Now Esek, there's nothing special about it. The root word, there's no root word. It just means what it is because it is a root word. So, and the only place where that's found is in that verse. So you can't see anything about it.
Esek.
Yeah. But when I get that, I go to the Gematria of Esek. Because I will find something. I will dig until I find something. There must be something. And the word Esek is the number 470. That means blackness, gloominess, darkness, heaviness, weight, to be poured out, to be melted, to be molten, twisted, distorted, crooked, perverse, to strip, to make bare, to strip oneself, to strive, to contend, to quarrel, to press upon, to oppress, to violate, to defraud, to do violence, to do wrong, to do deceitfully, to extort, oppression, extortion, injury, flood, downpour, overwhelming, to sink down, to subside.
Curses today.
And then measurement. Now measurement is the same as judgment. And then to regulate, to measure, to estimate, to ponder, to balance, to make, even, to level, to weigh, to be equal, to be wiped out, to test and to prove. So Esek is a bad word. There's no positive meaning whatsoever. And it all has to do with, I'm going to sort you out, mate. I'm going to press you down. I'm going to squash you. I'm going to do evil darkness and whatever to you. So that's the second well. So it's not a good well. So it seems like the first one, there was a battle between the righteous people and the people who want to go back to their old ways. The second one is to do with all these bad things happening. And then they dug a next well, which is Sitna. And Sitna comes from the word Sitna, that means strife, accusation, and enmity. So now we have two other words that mean exactly the same as Meribah, basically. But the ones show you there's content between righteous and people who want to long back. So they are righteous, but they don't want to follow this righteous. One to chew the cut. I want to chew some pork instead. Chew olives. Chew on kosher things. I want to chew leeks. Now, Sitna means strife, accusation, and enmity. It comes from the root word Satan. That means adversary and to resist. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
So now we go even deeper. So the first one, you're content with the righteous. The next one, it's just bad things happening. Then you see who's behind the bad things. Satan is behind it. The adversary. So now the enemy is upon me. So the double negative is hitting me hard here. And where this word Sitna is, or Hasatan, or Satan is found, is in Psalm 38:20, where David repented of his sin, and the consequences of his sin was basically the adversaries pursuing him. And I think that was the time Absalom was hunting him down, trying to get his kingship from him. So even though he sinned and he repented, the adversary was
already
oppressing him. So his repentance didn't take away the enemy. That's what it tells me.
He still had to pay.
He still had to have some pain. So the first one was sort of a graceful thing. You're content with the righteous ones. And if you keep on doing that, then the enemy will pursue you, and all those things of Esek will come upon you, because that's on the enemy. And as a result of that, you eventually will repent, but there's still consequences.
Yeah, that's what we've spoken about this many times before. Where and Christianity, they believe if you now repent of what you've done, everything is good.
Everything's squeaky clean.
You
Just get my wings and my halo and I'll be out of here. No consequences whatsoever. No, you'll still have consequences. If you think about David, his son died.
That's right.
Even though he prostrated himself, made a cross on the floor and cried tears.
This whole reign was fraught with
just because of that.
obstructions.
That's it reminds you of the kind of wrestling that Jacob.
Yes.
He contended with Yahweh.
Because I can't remember the reason that Isaac went there to Gerar. Was it because there was a famine or something? Because that's where he became rich and wealthy.
Isaac, he became very rich.
Which can sort of be a bit of a test.
Yes.
Provide a test that.
And his place of lodging and everything was beautiful. And then the third well is the word Rehoboth. That means wide places or streets. And that's basically what Isaac said, this is nice now we can all live here, it's nice wide open places. But where that word is first found is not as beautiful. It's in Genesis 19 verse 2, where the two messengers or angels were in the street in front of Lot's house. And he called them into his house because the people of Sodom and Gomorrah wanted to attack them. And that was in the context of the judgment of Sodom and Gomorrah. So you see it's actually 4 places of water. The first one is just wanting to go back, you're striving with the righteous people, and then you keep on doing that, then all these bad things will happen to you through the adversary. Then you repented, but you still have consequences. And if you still carry on, then the final outcome is this judgment. And hopefully you're in the household of Lot and you have a chance. Or not. So that's yet again the decision. That was an interesting find there with the 3 wells. And I think it ties in with our Mount Ebal. All these consequences of the 3 wells. On Mount
That mountain over there is called Bald Mountain. Is it that one? Which one is Bald
Yeah,
Mountain?
straight ahead.
Just straight ahead. Yeah,
It's a bald mountain.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's Mount Evil.
We've got Bald Mountain and Mount Morning. So
Mount Evil and
What are we going to do?
and then we have Mount Jerusalem.
That's on down the road.
No, Jerusalem up that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It's up that way.
it's
Yeah.
interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, we got all the mountains here.
Yeah.
We're in the best place though.
Well, we got 2 negative ones.
Yeah.
And then one's actually a warning. That's a good
Yeah,
thing.
morning.
Yeah.
I suspect that Bald Mountain actually was bold at some point in time, because this was a huge timber getting area, and they cut down all of the cedar trees here, the large,
Yeah.
to ship off to Sydney and Melbourne and whatever else for building.
Okay.
So it was probably stripped bare for a period of time, and now this is all regrowth here.
Fantastic.
As long as no hairy mountain.
It's actually interesting, isn't it? Because the greenies are so intent on what do you call it? Not using foresting, and I'm all for managed foresting. It's fine, not the stripping bare. But look, even the worst case scenario of having every single tree stripped off. Look at this.
Yeah. Comes back really
Yeah.
Comes
That's
back
not a
to
bald
life.
mountain anymore.
It's hair.
Yeah.
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 Exactly. Yeah.
It's got hair back, so it's Mount
The
Seir
thing
now.
about the deforestation is the quality of the trees they cut down. We won't see them again because they were 300, 400, 500, 600-year-old trees. Like they were bigger than anything that we've ever seen. You know, until like if you go down to Port Macquarie, what was the name of that old bottle butt? That tree.
Yeah.
The base of this tree is huge.
Oh my goodness, yeah.
Like huge. Where are
What
those
happened
trees?
there? Was that
Yeah, I'm not. I wasn't trying to diminish.
I understand, but yeah,
No, I know what you're saying.
It's really sad though that you have to they're landmarks now. You have to travel to see them, but just the size of this one tree. I took a video of me walking around this tree, and you can't imagine what a full size, fully grown one would be like, because none of them are. Well, a lot of them are broken off at the top. They're not as tall as they really should be.
Like the mountain ashes down.
Yeah.
years ago.
Ridiculous.
Do you know what happened?
And those
to
probably
that
aren't
big
even.
tree? That big, huge, large tree? What happened there?
No, I don't know.
I don't know.
Anyway, let's close in prayer and we can
Okay.
carry on.
We don't about trees.
Okay,
Okay, Harry, if you can do us the honours.
Father, it becomes more obvious that we simply cannot look to the world in any way to provide us with answers for the future, and that the only future that we have is in you, and we don't know fully what that will entail, but we do know that regardless of what direction you take us in, that the outcome is the very best outcome that we could hope for. And so we, Lord, we just thank you that you're opening up your word in this way. May it be, Lord, fixed in our hearts and minds, and so that we have a deeper understanding of you, and that we're fortified against the wiles of the devil, Lord God. All those little subtle ways that he tries to lead us off the track. Father, I just thank you for your continued provision, and ahead for the provision to deal with the days and weeks, months ahead. And we give you thanks in the name of Yeshua HaMashiach.
Amen.